Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin. I'm here with my co-host James Haskell. And in this video, we continue our tour around the AFC North, grading each and every position group, 1 through 4, depending on how they rank in the North. So on this stop, we will be grading the edge defenders. So whether it's a 4-3 or a 3-4, we're just going to go by edge defender. So outside linebackers if you're in the 3-4, and then DNs if you're in a 4-3. So, Jimmy, why don't you get us kicked off by giving us your number 4 ranked edge defender unit in the North?
Sure. So this one is an easy one for me. I have to go Pittsburgh Steelers here. No, I'm totally kidding. Before you guys blow us all up, well, at least me up, and call us both homers. The Ravens were an easy number 4 for me. This is the one position that they have not addressed in the offseason, other than signing Matthew Judon or him signing his tenure or his franchise tag. They haven't gotten him any help. So the easy one for me, we're only doing 2 deep for this position. And of course, for the Ravens, we're referring to Matthew Judon and Tyus Bowser based on, number of snaps. And so, we're going to leave Fergie out of this one. Other than Judon, there's no one really there, and I don't think Judon is a bell cow, if you will, for that position. So not anything difficult here for me. They're the number 4 in the division. We dialed up the most blitzes in the NFL last year, and we're still 21st in the pass rush. So not a good sign.
No.
So that's why I'm going number 4. Curious to know if there's any discrepancies or arguments on your end there, Glenn.
No, I mean, it's hard to argue that. I mean, you mentioned it that really the biggest move they did to address that was just keeping one of their own and bringing back Matt Judon on that franchise tag. And even no matter who we decide to go with, you mentioned we were going only 2 deep, even if we took – and actually Ferguson, I believe, had more snaps than Bowser. But Bowser did grade out better. So we took the better of the 2 as far as, their play. But either one, no matter who we took, it didn't matter. Judon kind of is alone in this camp as an outside presence for us. And so hopefully a position that we will be addressing either next season or at least in the near future. I'd like to see him do something to address pass rush because you mentioned there's no reason we blitz more than any other team in the league by far, and we're still in the bottom third in the league in sacks. I mean, that's just, to me, that's unbelievable. I mean, and it wasn't even close how much more we blitz the passer. So I got to agree. Ravens number 4. So moving on to number 3 in the division. A guy I think that's a guy that leads this group, I should say, is a guy I think is a little bit underrated. A guy that we don't really hear talked about very much when we bring up, and that's Dunlap leading the group or edge for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I got them at number 3, led by Carlos Dunlap, who I think is a phenomenal player. He's been around for a long time next to Geno Atkins, and they actually brought in a little bit extra help inside. So really his job, and I guess Sam Hubbard is the other guy we'll go with. Those 2 should be benefited even more this year by having DJ Reader next to Geno Atkins, and maybe their job gets a little bit easier. But for me, I got to go with Carlos Dunlap. Do you have his sack numbers in front of you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Dunlap. Carlos Dunlap last year had 9 sacks. Yeah, I agree with you as far as your ranking thus far. The Bengals definitely are my number 3 as well. So no argument from me there. Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins, like you said, are a great tandem. And Carlos Dunlap graded out really well, had a great season for himself last year considering the amount of time he's been in the league. So much respect to them. And him as an individual talent. Hubbard is a good player.
I don't know a ton about Hubbard. Do you happen to have any of his? Oh, I see. So he had 8.5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss,
which is nothing to sneeze at.
No, absolutely not. And he actually had a good amount of total tackles, 6 total tackles, which if you look compared to his counterparts is one of, if not the, is definitely one of the highest. I don't see anyone higher on this list until I get to Jamie Collins at 81. But that's the only guy in the top 50 I think I see that have higher total tackles.
Right. So speaking of tandems, they're a good tandem, and they'll be benefited by those, Reader and Atkins, of course. But as far as edge rushers go, solidly at number 3. And I think, we've talked about in the division, how some of the position groups seem to be stronger than others. And when one team is not good at something, usually no team in the division weirdly is not great at it either. I think we've kind of noticed that. At this position, I think is an area of strength for the division. If you look at the Bengals being number 3, that tandem, think about it, between 8.5 sacks and 9 sacks, your 2 main outside guys. That's pretty good, and you're number 3 in the division. So
on a 2-14 team, which you got to figure a lot of times they were being ran on late in the game, so not a ton of opportunities for Dunlap and Hubbard to get sacks, because typically you get sacks, when a team's trying to come back on you and they're forced to throw. I have a feeling that in the fourth quarter there wasn't a whole lot of throwing going on against the Bengals.
Yeah, absolutely. So that even adds to it. But number 2 for me on the correct list is because I am the
the correct list. What the
truth on this show?
What the
for me is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm probably going to get some shade for this, but I realized TJ Watt had, I think, 14.5 sacks last year and 14.5 sacks. And, according to Pro Football Focus, ranked as the highest, the best edge rusher in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But at the end, Bud Dupree is nothing to sneeze at. Bud Dupree had himself a decent season. He had double-digit sacks as well, didn't he? Have
11.5.
I'm talking about a decent season. But for me, at the end of the day, the reason I'm putting them at number 2 is one person alone is Myles Garrett. I think that, and I'll get into that in a second, but he's the reason for me that they are number 2. I just think that if I was starting a team and I had my pick of the litter, I'm taking Myles Garrett every single time and not thinking twice about it. So, as far as unit goes, I'm putting the Steelers at number 2, and I'm feeling good about it. What about you?
Well, I have the Browns at number 2, so I have the Steelers edging them out. Myles Garrett, you take away the helmet bashing incident, and yeah, he's an incredible player. But I'll say this: I think TJ and TJ and Bud Dupree, to me, are the more well-rounded of the group. I feel like Olivier Vernon and Myles Garrett, while they're really good, they're good pass rusher, especially Myles Garrett. He's an all-world pass rusher, maybe the best pass rusher in the league. But he doesn't necessarily grade out well against the run. And he doesn't really stack the tackle total. So if he's not getting sacks, I don't know how else he really impacts the team that, in a great way. He had 10 sacks, but and I realize he only played 10 games because of the suspension, but he also only had 29 total tackles. When you look at TJ Watt, he had 55, and I know he had more. He played in more games, but he didn't play in twice as many games. And he had 23 tackles for loss, where Myles Garrett had 13. So, I mean, to me, I just look at Myles Garrett as being more of the one-dimensional guy, where I think TJ can do both. He's an pass rusher, and I think he's a better run defender than Myles Garrett is. But again, this is very close argument here. I mean, they're obviously great, but TJ had 14.5 sacks. Bud Dupree, I think you said, had 11.5. That's a pretty darn good tandem. There's not a ton of people they're going to be doing that. And yeah, Myles Garrett is great, but Olivier Vernon has had 3 sacks last year in 10 games. So when you look at his counterpart now, Olivier Vernon has a great name and he's had a good career and all that stuff, but I don't think production-wise he's up there with Dupree, Watt, and Garrett. So for that reason, I rated the Steelers number 1. But man, you mentioned it. This is a heck of a outside the Ravens. This is a pretty good division for edge defenders. Matt Judon is our number 1 guy. According to one source, he was the 43rd ranked edge defender. But outside of that, I mean, there's a ton above him in the North. So hopefully the Ravens can address that position going forward and get somebody up a little higher on the list. But for now, I'm going to have to go Steelers, Browns, Bengals, Ravens.
Yeah, no, I can respect your list totally. Sorry, I was blaring my headphones in my ear. My ears almost started bleeding there. Jeez, a whiz.
What, hearing my beautiful voice? You want me to
turn my volume up and then
me?
Oh gosh, please don't.
Start singing?
No, but I guess as a unit, I can totally understand your justification because as a unit, obviously, numbers wise, any way that you want to measure it, they're a better pair than Olivier Vernon and Myles Garrett. But I think that based on the fact that Myles Garrett was averaging a sack a game before he left, and if he would end the season with 16 sacks, they still would have almost been in the same range as Dupree and Watt. Not quite, but
not quite.
Yeah, not quite. But what I'm trying to say is that top level talent, $1, 4 quarters doesn't always equal $1. The great Jerry Buss said that, and I can understand where that's coming from. He's the best pass rusher in the division. So for me, that's my rebut to your statement. But I totally get it, especially as a unit. I can see your justification. But yeah, so hopefully you guys agree with me and not with Glenn. I'm assuming that you will. That's usually how it goes.
No chance.
But let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment. Make sure you subscribe. I'm going to put myself on a repeat. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the button. It's really easy. I'm sure you've done it before. So go ahead and subscribe. Give us a like. But let us know your comments. Who's right? What's your order? Where are we wrong? Who are we missing out on? I feel like in every one of these, we miss one guy. Or we don't give one guy enough credit, or at least according to someone else's perspective. So let us know what it is, and we'll be sure to respond and keep these things coming out.
See you.